Thank you very much, Mr. Acharya. It's good of you to give me that flattering introduction. Uh, I don't want to repeat what we all know about Asia's rise. I mean, many of these things have become truisms in the last decade or so. Uh, about India, about Asia's tremendous economic growth, the political centrality that growth has brought to us. Instead, what I'd like to do is to make a few points about the geopolitical effects of the manner in which Asia, or at least South, Southeast, and Northeast Asia have grown and developed, and then to draw a few conclusions. It seems to me that there have been four main geopolitical effects of the manner in which Asia has risen in the last decade or so. One is, of course, obviously the shifts in the balance of power. The world's center of gravity is back in Asia after 2 centuries when it wasn't. There's been a clear shift in the balance of power. The center of gravity of the world economy, of politics, is also back in Asia. And in a process which actually started long ago. I mean, we all look at only the present, but started with Japan, followed by the Asian tigers. And basically, most of these countries which have done this followed the same pattern that Japan established of industrialization, export-led growth, and in huge investments in human capital. Uh, the central fault line of global geopolitics is today in Asia. But it's between China and the US. It's a pushback by the established powers against the rise. And so it's not only a pushback against China, it's against a change in the order. And the world is therefore today, to try and answer the chair's question at the beginning, to my mind, we are between orders today. I mean, the old US-led Western order is no longer capable of dealing with the issues that we face, clearly. But there isn't a new order to replace it. Whether we call it Asian century or whatever, still doesn't exist. The US today works to prevent the emergence of a peer competitor, which she sees in China, and competes in the economic, technological, military fields for power and influence. China, for its part, seeks a primacy that her version of history tells her she enjoyed before the so-called century of humiliation. Or as she puts it, she wishes to take center stage again. Of course, as Professor Muni reminded us, and the chair reminded us, the rise of Asia has been uneven. To the east of the subcontinent, we see strong Westphalian states with dynamic economies, while to the west, we see multiple non-state actors, outside powers influential. And economic growth is not much less evident. And our subcontinent, India, Nepal, we are all on the cusp between these two differing development pathways and political trajectories. And our security is affected by both, by terrorism, the effects of disorder to our west, by the growing geopolitical friction, uncertainty, and contention between states to our east. And in both cases, east and west, the overall effect of the rapid changes in the balance of power is that all the flashpoints and hotspots across the region are now live. From the East China Sea, Japan, China, Diaoyu, Senkaku, to Taiwan, to the South China Sea, to the India-China border, to Yemen, to Syria. I mean, you can go on. The list is just whether it's Israel, Iran, etc. Second big geopolitical consequence has been the rise of authoritarian leaders and the consolidation of state power in some of the major powers. Because the manner in which growth took place, because it was highly uneven and unequal in its distribution of benefits, both between and within states, inequality has generated internal political and social stress in perceived threats to identity, polarization, and in several significant states, large ones. These stresses have resulted in the rise of authoritarian leaders who promise to deal with the uncertainty by centralizing power. Their rise is accompanied by strongman personality cults, by a strong appeal to nationalism, ultranationalism for legitimacy. None of this would matter. Frankly, this would be everybody's internal affair, except that it reduces their ability to negotiate, to bargain, to undertake the compromises and the give and take that diplomacy requires. for the peaceful resolution of disputes and issues. Thirdly, we now have a new security agenda, thanks to globalization and its effects, but also thanks to technology, primarily ICT. And these are transnational. So while politics has become increasingly local, internal politics, the security agenda has become transnational and more, and requires multilateral solutions. It requires many countries to work together. You look at climate change, you look at pandemics. I mean, you saw during COVID, cybersecurity, international terrorism, maritime security. These are not issues that any one country or even small groups of countries can deal with. So for me, therefore, the risk of a single power centered sort of order emerging out of this are really almost very low, because no single power can deal with these issues, with the big issues of the day. And the COVID pandemic has also shown us that the existing multilateral institutions are less than effective. I mean, whether it doesn't matter which one, you look at G20, G7, UN, WHO, Security Council, what do they do to deal with COVID? And we're all struggling on our own, basically, every country. In fact, we've seen the opposite. We've seen a rise in vaccine nationalism and other such phenomena, which postpone solving problems. Fourthly, and this is really for us, one result of the heightened geopolitical contention and the fact that the central political contest between the US and China is being played out in Asia is that South Asia has increased significance. South Asia was a sideshow during the Cold War, no longer. The subcontinent and the Indian Ocean region matter today. This is also because we have done relatively well in economic terms over the last 3 decades or so. And it's also because we are located where we are. I mean, some of it is our doing. Some have done even better than others. Bangladesh is a very good example, as Professor Muni reminded us. Today, for instance, Nepal is courted by both the US and China for the free and open Indo-Pacific and for the Belt and Road Initiative, respectively. Tibet has become a sensitive issue again. What's true of Nepal is true of other countries in the subcontinent and the Indian Ocean region as well. So 2 quick sort of final points. What COVID did was not to change all these trends, but accelerate them all. All these trends were visible before 2020. But the pandemic has lowered economic expectations, heightened contestation among the powers, has sharpened China-US contention, has seen authoritarian leaders centralizing power, and has made the new security agenda even more critical. If anything, these trends have become stronger. COVID has also turned most countries inwards towards, in India's case, Atmanirbharta, self-reliance, China, dual circulation economy, the US building back better, just when we need international solutions to these problems. Secondly, the unevenness of Asia's rise means that over 50% of Asia's GDP, excluding Japan, and 30% of world economic growth in 2019, the year before the pandemic, came from 2 countries, India and China. We all have an interest in both these countries succeeding and in both of them managing their relationship well. It's in no one's interest that the larger powers and the drivers of growth fail, become angry, frustrated countries. And I think we should remember that when we play political games among ourselves. All in all, we're in the midst of a recalibration of geopolitics and the global economy, marked by, as I said, great power competition with no end in sight. So to my mind, Asia has risen, but has yet to find its own equilibrium, both in the world and within itself. Asia could continue to rise because it has, the economic fundamentals are strong, as is its relative and comparative advantage in political terms also. But whether it will continue to do so depends on it handling the geopolitics as well as it did the economics during the globalization decades. And that is an open question. I'll stop there and leave it to the discussion.